it's no doubt that we are in the times of intense difficulty, intense danger. So I have come to realize that in extreme times, in desperate times, it deserves desperate measure.
Okay, a very good evening to all our viewers who are watching yet another episode of I Defy Limits. And I'm your host, Hugo Tan. And today we have a very special guest with us. I mean, in these times of pandemic, and riots, and recession, it is great to have someone that can offer us a perspective on how we can be more resilient in these times and how we can achieve the breakthrough to the next level. And with us today is the president of Potential Builders International, 3 times author of Foundation to Greatness, a pastor, an entrepreneur, a beloved husband and father. With this, please put our hands together for Pastor Uzoma Victor.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. Thank you for the introduction.
So, first and foremost, Pastor, how have you been coping during this movement control order?
Well, before I share my experience with the control period, the movement control order, I want to welcome our viewers. I want to say it's my pleasure to be in I Defy Limits with Hugo, and it's an opportunity to share something interesting with our viewers. And I believe that it's going to be an interesting time. It's going to be a wonderful time with our viewers. Also, like you rightly said, excuse me, as you rightly said, I'm Victor Uzoma. I'm from Nigeria. I have stayed in Malaysia for almost 11 years now. So I think I have quite a very good experience about Malaysia by now. Also, I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm an author, an entrepreneur. Also, I would say that I'm a question specialist. However, coming to your question, this time of movement control order, it has been an interesting time. And it's no doubt that we are in the times of intense difficulty, intense danger. So I have come to realize that in extreme times, in desperate times, it deserves desperate measures. And what do I mean by desperate measures? One needs to go back to the drawing board, have a look at where you are coming from, where we are now, and where we are going to. What is the future all about? Looking at this moment, I think it's a time for many to sit down and have a rethink, draw a new diagram for their life, lay a new foundation, because definitely the world is not going to be the same after this pandemic. So for one to have a greater future, then you need to lay a greater foundation now, a very good foundation now. So this period of movement order, what I have been doing most essentially is to sit down to redefine the moment, set new goals, and lay the foundation for the new beginning. Because we are having a new beginning now. So what everyone ought to do is to sit down, lay a foundation for a new beginning. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Uzoma, on the sharing. As Mr. Uzoma have rightly mentioned, he's a questioning specialist. He asks questions. And the question for today is, how should we view this year of fires, of wars, of pandemic, and riots? How have we first gotten into this? Is there a systemic failure? Or is this the human nature that always leads us to the wrong decisions? So before we talk about tonight, we're going to talk about what got us here, what kind of attitudes and skill sets that we should develop in these times, and how can we achieve the breakthrough to the next level. But for this moment, what do you think, Mr. Uzoma? What got us here?
Well, first and foremost, I would like to introduce something that has been helping me over time. It has been a book I have read, I'm reading, and I continue to read. And that book is what I call the Ancient Book. The Ancient Book. In that book, the author of that book clearly in the book mentioned his ways, which are the guiding principles of life, and his acts, which came as a result of the application of his ways. That book, I refer to that book as the manual for human living, the compass for success. Since I started reading the book and continuously read the book, I have come to realize that that book, the Ancient Book, is the only book in human history that made reference to no other book, and every other books are making reference to it. That book is the foundation for our existence. When you read that book clearly, you will come to realize that the moment we are in is not just, it didn't just happen. Because the book has predicted the times before now and how to survive when such times come. You know, there was a portion I read in that book. He said he appeared by one of the characters in the book, one of the characters he mentioned in the book, which the name is Moses. He said he appeared by Moses, by his ways, and to the people that Moses was leading by his acts. But most interesting thing there is that the people Moses was leading only saw the acts by the application of the ways that Moses did, which means the most paramount thing there to grapple with is the ways, which is the guiding principles, the rules of life, which the author has already given us in the book. And I would advise, if any of our audience can lay hold on the book, it will be good, because the book showed us and tell us how to live a successful life, even in times of crisis. So in that book, he tried to let us to know that in time of difficulties, he said, don't be anxious for anything. But in everything, he said, with prayer and supplication. Make your request known. And he said, the God of peace there will come and show you a way out. The God of peace will come and show you a way out. And in another place in the book, he tried to let us understand that he said, don't be anxious, don't be worried, that I, who has authored this book, have overcome this crisis. Which means, what it means, if you ask me on a layman explanation, is that by the application of his ways, you will overcome the times. You will be able to sail through. You will be able to come out victorious. You will be able to be a conqueror at the end of the day. And lastly, if you ask me, I'm trying to share one thing again concerning my experience, and I want to use it to advise our audience. One of the things that these times try to induce in us is fear. And one thing that fear does, it has a crippling effect. It cripples your reasoning. It cripples your action. It cripples your efforts. It cripples everything, entire everything that concerns you. But the way to come out of it is to apply the opposite, which is faith, which the book keep on encouraging us to build our faith. Because he said, if your faith fails in times of adversity, in times of crisis, it means your faith is small. So you have to build it to the extent, to the level that when crisis comes, you will be able to sail through. Let me share an experience during this movement control order and the news everywhere about the coronavirus and stuff like that, you know. And a time came, at the initial time, fear crept within into my life. And I was having this fear. I started having all manner of symptoms. Everything that the news has carried, everything that I have read about the COVID-19, I started having all those symptoms. At a time, I can't even, the fear just crippled me. It paralyzed me. My reasoning, my everything was just controlled by fear. My feelings, everything was controlled by the fear. One day, I decided and I told my wife, I want to go to where they are doing the testing. I think I have this. You know? So while I was contemplating to go, another voice just whispered in my, what are you doing? Is this still you? So what are you telling people? What are you teaching people when you tell them about faith and stuff like that? So it seems that my brain was reset and that faith came in. And the moment that faith came in, I'm telling you, instantly, all those symptoms that I was having disappeared. Instantly disappeared. So if we can build our faith, he said, if your faith is as small as a mustard seed, you can say to anything, you can say to this mountain, move, and that mountain can move. So I'm coming from the spiritual aspect of it. Then when you ask whether the crisis, if they are human nature or if they are systemic failure, one thing is that we need to understand what is human nature and what is systemic failure. First, systemic failure, I have come to realize that it's a failure as a result of flaws in our system. And practically, when you look at our system today, you will realize that a lot of things are not right. So, to me, I can say it's as a result of both human nature and also as a result of systemic failure. Human nature, what is human nature? Human nature is, you can say, is commonly what humans share generally. What humans share generally in terms of, for example, feelings, behavioral traits, psychological characteristics, for example. These are what humans share generally. And human feelings are such that they want to be better than the other person. They want to be richer than the other person. Human failures, human nature tends to be self instead of others. It first thinks of self. That is human nature. So, practically, when you look at it, you see it's as a result of one, human nature, and two, systemic failure. Because in our system today, there are lots of flaws that need to be amended, that need to be reset. Then, coming back to that ancient book that I told you, in terms of the human nature, it said the heart of a man is desperately wicked. The heart of a man is desperately wicked. So when you see the heart of a man, it's all about what do I do to be better than this person? So when they start thinking in that manner, in that form, and all those things, so like I said earlier, because human nature is that selfish, self-centered, then they tend to, irrespective of what we do to the other person, they don't want to care, only if I can be better. That's why the author of that ancient book that I was saying gave us the greatest law of life. And that law of life, when you apply that every other thing rests on that law. And it states that love your neighbor as you love yourself. If we all can love our neighbor as we love ourselves, then which is coming to human nature now, we tend to love ourselves. So if you can know how you love yourself, if you as well can love other person the way you love yourself, this world will just be a better place. Our world will just be a better place. Many things that are the problem that we are having today, see the crisis in US, see the things we are passing, even the COVID-19 and every other things that we are going through. When we love others as ourselves, then we will come together, we will unite, and know that there is force in unity. Because in that same book, because I like making reference to this same book, in that same book, it said, one shall chase 1,000, but two will chase 10,000. Now, when it said one shall chase 1,000, but two will chase 10,000. So there is force, multiplication of force when people unite. This is two now. One is putting 1,000 to flight, is chasing 1,000. Then when two comes, it's no longer they're supposed to chase 2,000, but now it's 10,000. Do you understand? And looking at it, there was an experiment done by scientists some time ago. I just read about it. I don't know whether it's in US or in Australia or somewhere like that. And they just brought an ox. So they loaded the loads for the ox to carry. He was able to carry 1,000 tons of load. So, but when two was yoked together, they were able to pull above 10,000 tons. Do you see the force in unity? So if we can unite as humans, most of the things that are troubling us, most of the problems that we are having will just be a thing of the past. And that is the simple truth. Thank you.
Once again, thank you to Mr. Uzoma for the very enlightening sharing. I think there are 2 points that we can pick up from there. The first is actually the story of how our fear, self-induced fear, can be so crippling that it causes you to suspect yourself to have conditions that you do not have. The beauty of the mind-body connection cannot be denied any further. And to go on further, I think there are 2 very important points. Number one, our viewers have the question. Just now you mentioned about having faith, even if it's the size of a mustard seed. But the question is, how do we build out this faith, to overcome fear? That's question number one. Is there a steps that you go through to build up your faith? Number two, you mentioned that our human nature is selfish. We care about our personal interests before the interests of our community. Therefore, the question is like Abraham Maslow hierarchy of needs, right? So we take care of all our own personal needs until at the top level where we finally transcend ourselves to care for other people. So the question number two would be, how can we train ourselves to be more selfless, to care for our neighbor, to love our neighbor, like what you say? How do we begin?